What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Horizon Comics. My name is Joey M. Lang, and I'm here once again to give you guys yet another behind the scenes look at some concept art for one of the four villains to be debuting in the upcoming Shadow Puppet comic. And this villain, much like Segment, who was the subject of our last video, will also be a member of Horizon Comics' big bad global villain organization, the Assassin Nation, which Shadow Puppet will be taking on four members of in his upcoming title. And speaking of the title that Shadow Puppet will be making his Horizon Comics debut in, I am finally ready to share the official title with all you guys, which I'll be doing in our next video, so stay tuned. And with all that preamble out of the way, it is time to take you guys behind the scenes in this Horizon Comics YouTube exclusive look at the creation of Voltress. All right, so as opposed to my last behind the scenes look, I showed you the sketch on the Procreate app, but here I started with the sketch on paper itself, which I transferred to my Procreate app and then began using the ink stencil to ink over the parts of the pencils that I wanted to keep, and ones that would be worked on later would be kept blank, but you'll see that more as the process goes on. So this was a very simple idea for the character, just a badass assassin character who shoots lightning from her eyes. So I took that fairly rudimentary concept, and I had to come up with some kind of simple yet eye-catching look for it. So ultimately, this is the process in which you're watching is what I came up with. When I am inking the pencils, it's tricky sometimes because I want to get as accurate to the pencils as possible, but sometimes the pencils just aren't quite as spot on as I can get on the program. So you'll be seeing a lot of that correction in here. Yeah, and yes, it's going very fast, but I think you'll get the general gist of how this works. You see the inks on the Procreate app just gives it that nice, crisp, solid line work that really starts to bring it to life. You can actually start to see the character really coming into its own with these inks. The pencil is one thing, and that's where it all starts for me, but the inks are inks, and then finally the shading after the colors are where it's really brought back to life. As you can see, I went with a little bit of somewhat of a 90s 90s inspired motif with like the tubes that I put on her gauntlets and such. And now I am coloring. I'm doing the skin tone first. I'm layering it all. It's just a lot easier when I layer it. I found a place to put that Assassin Nation logo, and I put it right on her bandana of sorts there. I left her eyes blank, not only because, not just because I don't like to draw pupils, because I don't mind that. I really like that blank eye look. I blame Batman the Animated Series for that, to be honest. But, so I'm going with the darker shades. I mentioned before, I pretty sure on my last video, that I like to go with a tritone of colors. So I will often find a shade or two, and then maybe a color or two. So I'm going with like a splash of yellow for the accents on here to kind of simulate a gold kind of texture, or color rather, for the parts such as the lightning bolt on this like eye symbol insignia on her chest, on her armor. And the rest you'll see I'm going to go with a sort of dark, almost blood red. It's a nice complementary color to the yellow. I mean, you'll see in the flash, you'll see a lot of reds and yellows because they just go really well together. And I would say that this was more of like a accidental homage to that color palette, but I don't regret it. I think it came together very well with the darker red. The brighter red is fine, but for this kind of character with a darker kind of basis for the character, I feel like needed some darker tones. The yellow was just that splash of bright color that I needed, which even in some of the darkest characters is necessary. So I get rid of the background when I'm doing lighter colors because it's easier to see where I gotta like edit and erase. I used another stencil to put some lightning through those tubes. Not sure how I'm going to explain that one away, but I just thought it looked really cool. I think it's like maybe excess electricity from her body that she has and stored up in her gauntlets, and then she eventually shoots out of her eyes. So that's where you're seeing here. I have like the lightning scarring pattern under her eyes, as I'm sure this would take some kind of toll on a person's eyes if they are shooting lightning out of their eyes all the time. So I have that kind of like excess lightning coming out of her eyes. Now I'm going with the shading. Shading is one of the most tedious, but also most, I'd say, satisfying parts of any piece, because it does take a little while to get the right hang for figure out where you want the light source to come from, and then you have to really nail how the shadows are going to fall on that body depending on where it is. So there's a lot of erasing, a lot of shaping, like I pointed out in my last video. Where the shadows fall is really hard for me for me to figure out. I just really got into shading in my later teen years. I've been drawing my whole life, but I never quite grasped the concept of shading until much later. So I'm still trying to get used to it myself. I'm always a work in progress, as any artist should be. But that's kind of what I am working on right now, is nailing my shading. I think I'm doing pretty okay for now, but I know I can be better. If you guys have any tips, please leave some tips in the comments. I would really appreciate it. It's like I'm trying to find like where the ridges land on here. The ridges of these like segments of the leg plating, I guess would be, or the part of that outfit. Not sure what I would call it. But this is just like kind of in my mind's eye where I picture it. I kind of just take what I visualize in my head and I try to make the most accurate depiction of that on the physical copy. So you see there, as I'm shading and lighting, I did color the rest of the insignia off camera. Gave it that bright red in the center as like kind of like a really bright pupil, like a good center point, centerpiece for the picture. And I decided to leave her hair white. I figured it would be just a cool little nuance, just subtle enough to not really need a reason, but also just like to give that character just a little bit more uniqueness to her overall look, as that's really important. I wanted these characters in the assassination to be as nonchalant, yet as a assassin you would imagine would be, yet eye-catching and color-popping as possible. So had to find the right balance and marriage of those two concepts. And there we have Voltress. Like all other members of the Assassin Nation, Voltress's true identity and history are unknown. Voltress is able to fire striking bursts of concentrated electricity from her eyes, which she masterfully uses to eliminate targets alongside her 3 squad mates. Now, Voltress and her squad have been assigned to silence Shadow Puppet, who's recently proven to be a growing threat to the Assassin Nation. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please leave a comment below if you like the character, if you have any suggestions for the character, if you think anything should be different, what you like about the character. I'd really appreciate the feedback. Your feedback might just end up changing the course of some of these characters in the comic, which would be pretty cool. With all that said, like I said, like, comment, and subscribe. That's not gonna cost you anything more than 2 Mississippis to hit the subscribe button, and maybe another half a Mississippi to hit the notification bell if you like what you see, so you can be notified anytime Horizon Comics puts out new content. You can also see me on When Geeks Collide right here on YouTube with my good friends Jeff, Steve, and Andy doing toy hunts, figure reviews, plugging all sorts of nerdy content for all your geeky hearts to digest. So you can find me here on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on Horizon Comics, with an X, as well as right here on YouTube, like I just said. But, like I always say, I will see you guys next time, just over the horizon.